all of these companies should be broken into tiny pieces or smaller pieces. I mean, just actually, if I'm not going to be use hyperbole. What is fascinating is the way conservatives and would-be conservatives, so I'm including, Greenwald, not a conservative, just an anti-liberal. The way that they avoid any type of structural change, and I know that Glenn has now in his tweets is starting to recognize, because he's probably heard this criticism, because he apparently spends all day online Googling himself constantly, that he never has promoted antitrust measures in the past, to my knowledge. And now he's sort of like giving at least a head shake to it. But let's be clear. There has been one set of major antitrust hearings over the past couple of years, really over the past 10 years. And they have been initiated and held by Democrats. Does that mean that the entire Democratic Party is promoting antitrust? No, but it does mean that like someone like the snake lady or whatever, Elizabeth Warren has built mostly her career on two different things, like bankruptcy and antitrust. That there's a massive push within the Democratic Party to the extent that one exists. It's in the Democratic Party. There are one or two, maybe Republicans who have been at least talking about the problem of consolidation of power. But to argue that there is any political party that is looking at antitrust and the Democrats not being the first word out of it. Now, are they doing it sufficiently to my, no, there's a big fight, but the fight is happening in the Democratic Party. In the Republican Party, there is no fight. There's just a couple of people who are just like, because you can find people who, espouse anything. And so it's fascinating to see what's going on the right when they talk about Facebook, because the whole game here is, again, hide the ball in terms of structural change and make it about nefarious players with nefarious agendas that are all a function of personalities, and there's nothing structural to see here. It is all just because of decrepit values and because they're authoritarian. Degeneracy of liberals and all of this. There's no structurally, Ronald Reagan changed the definition of what constitutes a monopoly with the help of Robert Bork, or basically Robert Bork did it with the help of Ronald Reagan. That is just simply the reality of our politics. When we went from the idea of a monopoly being assessed, not just based upon whether it provides low-cost goods for consumers, but whether it inhibited democracy and competition. That's the story. Everything else is just BS. Here's Laura Ingraham with some of that BS.
Does no one else think the timing of this is just a little too convenient? Biden's on the ropes, and the Democrats are barreling toward a brutal beatdown in the midterms. Could this just be a clever way to rev up the speech police against alternative points of view ahead of the election? All under the guise of protecting the children.
The reconciliation bill was a culmination of my service in Congress because it was about the children. The children, the children, the children.
They love citing the children. Well, let's begin with one basic fact. The left doesn't care if the culture or big business spreads content that's not appropriate for children. They never have. They literally do not care. In fact, for decades, liberals have defended, even celebrated cultural and political forces that harm children. Porn, drugs, gambling, gender bending, school shutdowns, mask mandates, and of course their holy grail of abortion. Democrats support all of it. Now, some on the left would prefer if we didn't even have children.
Yeah,
Well, there's times.
Some
I
people.
got to admit.
I know somebody who wishes he doesn't have a sister, and that's Laura Ingram's brother. who says she's a Nazi because also their dad was a Nazi.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, you'll notice what she did here, right? What Pelosi, and you can take it for what it's worth, Pelosi's talking about the reconciliation bill is for children. She's talking about things like pre-K. She's talking about child tax credit. She's talking about a whole host parental leave. There's a whole host of features of the reconciliation bill. But that has nothing to do with what's going on with Facebook. And when they say, you know, you have one or two people bringing up Finstas and whatnot, the bottom line is the company abuses its power. The company also, just coincidentally, and I don't know that Google does this, I want the same thing to happen with Google, the idea that Facebook in any way suppresses conservative thought or speaking is just simply absolutely 100% untrue. There has not been a single week that has gone by where conservatives haven't dominated the top 10 or 20
Ben
links.
Ben Shapiro,
sites.
Candace Owens, Daily Wire,
Dan
Blaze,
Bongino.
Ben Shapiro.
Suddenly Dan Bongino is like no longer in favor. That's weird.
Must be a part of the big liberal conspiracy. And you talk, yeah, I mean, and what she's trying to do there too is when you're talking about degenerate liberals, right? She brings up all of those things that they want your kids to watch porn on Facebook, which like, all right, I don't know about that. But I mean, she's trying to make it and wrap it into the broader conservative project going into the midterms, which is the same thing with critical race theory. It's the same thing with mask mandates, and it's just a bit more of a light diet version of what the Q people are obsessed with, which is that there is a cohort of liberal elites who have way more money and they participate in a culture that you don't understand, and they're indoctrinating your children and changing the way that they view the world that will be different from the way that you view it. And it has a lot of misogyny baked into there as well. And all of this is just to cash in on the general anxiety that everyone is feeling about these social media companies and their power over people, and hide the ball, as you say, make it about this scary indoctrination, and don't make it about hurting the people behind the curtain and their shareholder profits and the money that is there to be had in investment in massive companies like this.
Bear at home.
Or is this on the topic? I just have one thing to say on this tech company thing. The tech companies have a problem kind of similar to what oil companies have with their workforce, that they're upset about the direction of the company and the product and the effect it has on society. And this has been a problem with Zuckerberg. You can see articles saying Facebook employees, even before this whistleblower, upset about, say, we're addicting kids or body dysmorphia or the political stuff. And what this moment right now is, they're calling it a free speech thing, but really this is about the authoritarian control of these monopolies' management over their workforce. So Peter Thiel and Joel Kaplan and Mark Zuckerberg can decide what Facebook's going to do with their algorithms and stuff like that. And all the employees, they can just get bent. They can try whistleblowing, they can try whatever. But right now, Facebook's accusing the whistleblower of stealing stuff. And so that's the game that they're going to play. Like, that's what this is about. This is about management control over their workforce that doesn't want to do what they're doing.
Yeah, they're going to consolidate in response to this and like really tighten up and make sure that all of like their algorithm isn't a vice.
Barrett Holmes says, "Did you just call Elizabeth Warren the snake lady?" Yes, I was mocking those who would say, I meant snake emoji lady. I was mocking those who 6 months ago, whatever it was, a year ago, were saying she's a snake emoji and don't recognize that she's the one who has been on the forefront of now what you think is actually the legitimate response to these things. I mean, let's be clear. Socialists and those to the left of socialists really don't have much interest in, I think they should have more, because I believe that there's in terms of a certain path, but don't have an ideological interest in the concept of antitrust, because it is a reformation of our current system. I happen to think that if you want to get to a system of socialism, you're going to have to diminish the power, the concentration of power by individual sectors and individual players within those sectors. But that's another argument. But for those who purport to say the Democratic Party doesn't really care about any structural reform of places like Facebook and Google. It just so happens that the person that you also said was a snake emoji for a long time is probably one of the most prominent people in all of our all of our politics.
Well, and the left not being at that table means that I think like the left response would be, well, we need to, like I said, the workers at these companies need to have more of a say in what they're doing. And so if you make like Google and Facebook and all these places more worker controlled as opposed to like executive controlled, then you're getting towards somewhere. But the left isn't, like you said, it's not really a conversation.
No, the left wastes its time crying about like a moment at the Democratic debate in 2020 as opposed to maybe having a bit more comprehensive of who is useful and who is not in these conversations.
You get more worker power the smaller the company is. And I mean, before you even impose any structural reform, you get more worker power in a smaller company, obviously, because they have more capacity to shut things down. There's greater dependence of management on the workers when that ratio is smaller. But also, to the extent that you want to create structures so that workers have more say within the workplace, you also first need to deal with the power that these people who don't want that to happen have. And the way you diminish that power is you make them smaller.
I agree about the path thing. I think antitrust is just what America does before it does any sort of like explicit class warfare. But
that's what you always say, right? It's not sufficient, but it is necessary.
Well, yeah, it will help the playing field too.
It's exactly what it needs to happen. You can't, like, again, there's not one path. There are 400 different paths, and you pick the ones that get us to the place where we need to be. There's no magic pill. There's no silver bullet. It's ridiculous.